Super Bowl is over. Season is over. Offseason is fully officially here. Although Suneil and I were already ahead of the game. We talked about some of the offseason and free agents last week. We're going to talk about free agents that could end up on this team from other teams. We're going to talk about how close they are to a Super Bowl. And I got to ask Suneil a hard-hitting question, and we're going to do that next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are bringing you our take down to the last second. It's Tuesday, which means I've got my guy, so real, Suneil. What's up, Suneil?
You know, living the dream, man. We're in the full, NFL season is officially over. Just enjoying the off season so far. I'm hurting. My heart's hurting, bro. Like, that game was brutal, but yeah, it was fun. It was a great Super Bowl game. I thought that the ending was a little bit rough for how it ended, but sure. It's pretty exciting how the wide receivers are going back and forth now. It's definitely entertaining. You could say the 49ers may have started a trend. Who knows?
Yeah. Listen, the Twitter figures are strong after the Super Bowl game, and it definitely started after the NFC Championship. You know, it's interesting because the whole build up to the Super Bowl, I didn't even pay attention. I wasn't taking in any of the content. And I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to watch the Super Bowl. I actually ended up watching it just because my 8-year-old was really into it. He's a Patrick Mahomes fan as well. So watched the game with him, really enjoyed it, loved watching his reactions to it, let him stay up a little bit late on a school night to finish that game. And I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good game, close game, fun outsider game to watch. But, Chiefs are Super Bowl champs again, and the 49ers are not. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. But it's interesting because you talked about the trash talk after the game, and we're seeing it between A.J. Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster and some of these other players, Darius Slay, and even Tyreek Hill's gotten involved. A bunch of crazy stuff. But really, it started with the 49ers. They're the ones that kind of started with the trash talk. So where did you land on this whole thing? Because we didn't really talk about it last week, but I think a lot of people really, really enjoyed it. And I wanted to get your thoughts about what you thought about with the 49ers trash talk leading up to the Super Bowl and then even continuing after the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it took kind of like a life of its own. Initially, I never saw it really as trash talk. I saw it, it's the week of the Super Bowl. These players are, going out promoting whatever brand they're promoting at the time.
Sleep number bed.
Yeah,
what's your
sleep number bread. I don't know. I haven't made that. I haven't made that Trey Lance money quite yet. But and obviously the last team to play the Eagles, which is a team in the Super Bowl, are the 49ers. So obviously they're going to ask, what do you think about this team? What do you think their chances are? That's just normal. What's going to happen? And we all know what happened that NFC Championship game. There's no way that anybody on the 49ers believed that they know what would happen that game if the quarterback was healthy. So that's where the answers were coming from. I think that the 49ers were confident going into that game. They don't feel like they got a true chance to show they feel like what that game is. I don't think anybody is sitting there saying that they didn't lose. Everybody knows that they lost. They've accepted that they lost. I don't think they've accepted that was the better team. And I think they have the right to feel that way when they didn't have a quarterback that could throw the ball. Now, to me, if you're a player at that level of competition, I don't know how else you're supposed to answer. Like Debo said it, are we supposed to just sit there and tell them they would have beat us even if we had our starting quarterback? That's not what they're going to say. Maybe there's better ways they could have answered it in a more politically correct way, but at the end of the day, this is the personality of this team. They have swagger. They're confident. They believe in what they say. And you can't like it on the field And the way that Brandon Ayuk blocks is the way that he answered those questions. The way that Debo finishes plays is the way he answers those questions. You can't like it in one aspect and then, start questioning it or judging it in another aspect. You don't just become that person on the field. That is who you are in all aspects. So I loved it. I thought that I liked that they weren't just politically correct. And I've been saying it, Jesse, man, the Eagles and the 49ers are going to play consistently in these playoffs. They're by far, I think, the two best organizations in the NFC. And I think for the next 2-3 years, they're the class of the NFC. I don't see another team jumping up into that class anytime soon. So I love it. It's going to be a real rivalry the next few years.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think the Eagles have some really interesting things. In fact, you want to know more about the Eagles offseason, which is the team the 49ers are facing. I'm going to be putting out a video on the second channel about them. I broke down their cap situation, some of the things that they're looking at this offseason. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out for the Eagles. But this is a 49ers show, so we're going to stick to that. But if you are interested, hit the link at the top of the chat. It's pinned, and subscribe to that second channel and look out for that video. But the 49ers, I mean, as far as the trash talk goes, Suneil, I didn't look at it so much as trash talk leading up to the Super Bowl because they were asked the questions. I mean, what, like you said, what are you supposed to do? Of course you think you were going to win that game. You're not going to just roll over and take the L. You were asked the question. It's not like they outright came out and were like, well, this, that, that's not the way that played out. However, I took exception a little bit after the game was over. I personally was not a big fan of Debo tweeting out about Bradbury before the game had started. He'd called him trash, which I think is a little bit over the top. And then he tweets out after the holding call, like, "Oh, I told you. What did you think this was?" It's like, bro, you're not in the game. Like, at some point, it's over. And I think once that other game starts, that's when you've got to pull back. You were asked the questions leading up to it. You answered all the questions. I get you feel like you should be in that game. But that game was a completely different game played by teams that didn't involve you, and you're celebrating their, I don't know. I felt weird about that. And that's because as a fan, I hate it when you beat a team. Like, let's say we beat the Cowboys, and then Cowboys fans are celebrating the fact that the Eagles beat us. Oh, what happened to 31-7? You didn't do it. So what?
Right.
Who are you? What are you talking about? So as a fan, I wasn't going to celebrate that the Eagles lost. That's just me personally, because the 49ers weren't the ones to do it. The Chiefs were, and we're not the Chiefs. The last time I checked, I'm not in that fan base. So that's the only place that I drew the exception. I'm like, I could have done without that one. That's the one I could have done without. I just think that that's a mentality, and this is a quote that I use all the time. It's a Conor McGregor quote. You've heard me say it, but winners focus on winning and losers focus on winners. And I felt like that was a loser focusing on a potential Super Bowl winner. And that right there, I did not enjoy. That's just me personally.
Yeah, and I think Bradbury got the what's it called? Was like a casualty of war.
Yeah.
I think that was more the built up kind of, because there was another narrative, whether it be from the Eagles fans, from some of the content creators, from 49ers to just national media as well, that the 49ers were like these players, Ayuk and Debo and them were like being salty, and that they weren't. That's the reason why they had these opinions, was based off of being salty. Brandon Ayuk said, "I'd bet all my money on the Chiefs." Debo said that he thinks that this secondary is weak, that they have holes in it, all this kind of stuff. And people were saying that they were just hating. So I think that statement, the way that I saw it, was Debo saying, look, it wasn't just because I was salty. This is me being justified in my opinion. I think Bradbury kind of got it wasn't tactful, because obviously, there's a human behind that and a player. But I think for me, and obviously I'm a 49er homer, but I look at it like it was more them being vindicated, that their opinions weren't just from hate. It was like, hey, we know this game, and that's why we're saying these things. more than actual just going at the Eagles type of thing.
Yeah, and maybe that's the case. Maybe I misread the situation. If that is the case, then maybe my opinion would probably change a little bit. And maybe that is the case. And let me be clear, like as a competitor myself, I'm I'm all for the trash talk. Like when I compete and anytime growing up I competed athletically, I was the biggest trash talker. So I have no issue with the trash talk. That is not, that's I just think at some
we
point
see you on Twitter
when that game is when that game is over and you're not the team that puts that other team out, that's the end of it. You're done. Now it's between those teams. Let them trash talk.
And the reason why I say that, Jesse, is Debo came out and said he was going for the Eagles because he wanted AJ Brown to win a ring.
Yeah.
So like I don't think that was a shot at the Eagles. I think it was more about this narrative that they're just salty losers, and that's the reason why he made that statement about Bradbury and the defense and all that kind of stuff. I think he felt vindicated, and that's why it came out.
Totally fair. Crow says Detroit and Sea Chickens moving up. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Detroit's going to be a fun team to watch next year. I think Bleacher Report put them at 10 in their power rankings. We're actually going to talk about that in a second. But they're going to be a lot of fun, and I think the Seahawks are definitely going to be better. Absolutely, I do. 49er Soback says, hey, Jesse, have a question for you. Do you think the Niners-Eagles just became a new rivalry? I would say they're more of a rivalry than Dallas and San Francisco because right now, and I'm not saying historically, obviously us old heads, we know that that's a rivalry. But right now, these two teams, the 49ers own a win over the Eagles. The Eagles own a win over the 49ers. Currently, the 49ers in this regime is 2-0 against the Cowboys. So that's not really a rivalry until the other team wins. The Eagles have done that. The 49ers have done that. They play next year. I think it might be opening night, Thursday night. We'll see. I think that'd be a fun one to watch, but I think it's definitely a budding rivalry, and I'm looking forward to it. This I disagree with. I don't holy shit. I mean, if that's average, if that is average, Crow, I want to know what elite looks like because
Crow,
oh my gosh, Hurts crushed it.
Please be trolling. Otherwise, you get no chance to put a football opinion ever again if you're not trolling at this point.
See, he started out hot, and this is the first time I've seen him in the chat. So, Crow, welcome. We're just joking with you, but Detroit, this great take. Like this, and then not so much a great take. Hopefully you're joking because I have no idea how you get that one. That's just me. Cryptic says QB runs work for Hurts, not Lance. Bad luck. Laugh out loud. Yeah, they're different type of runners. I mean, they're completely different type of runners. Hurts is a lot more dynamic with his feet. He's more of a natural runner. He's got a lower center of gravity, thick legs. I mean, he looks like he could run the ball. Trey Lance runs upright, a little bit more thin in the trunk, not as fast, not as explosive. They're just completely different runners. I mean, if you made a game plan for Patrick Mahomes that looked like the game plan the Eagles did with Hurts, probably wouldn't go as well. I mean, Patrick Mahomes isn't that type of runner. He's a great scrambler and an improviser, but he's not a great just runner. Looking at it, Justin Herbert's another guy, very athletic. If he gets out in the open field, I mean, he can run on you, but he's probably going to average 200 to maybe 300 yards a season because he's not a dynamic design run type of guy. So they're just different players. They're completely different players to me anyways. I don't think that they're at all the same, but I appreciate the super chat, Cryptic. Texas Niner, yes, Spears. Okay, let's talk about the power rankings. The 49ers were 5th in Bleacher Report's power rankings. This is out of the whole NFL. The teams that were ranked ahead of them in no particular order were obviously the 2 Super Bowl teams. They also had Buffalo, and they had the Bengals ranked ahead of them. Do you think Bleacher Report got it right?
I think it's tough right now because there's a lot of question marks with the 49ers. So I think it's fair because, the 4 teams above them all have established who the quarterback is, right? Whereas the 49ers still don't know who that quarterback is. Is it Brock Purdy? Is it Trey Lance? So I think usually when it comes to these power rankings based off of no games, they usually go for established quarterbacks first. So yeah, I think it's fair. I don't take offense to them being ranked behind those 4 teams?
I think, I don't know if I don't know, but Buffalo is a very incomplete team. Now, obviously, they're going to get Von Miller back at some point next year, but they cannot run the ball still at all. The defense is losing pieces. Josh Allen's price is going up. So I would say I would put the 49ers ahead of them. I'd put the 49ers ahead of the Eagles right now as well, just because of all the pieces they're potentially going to lose. I don't know. I mean, I don't think they got it way wrong by any means, but I think the 49ers, I'd put them in the top 3. I mean, it's tough, right? No games are being played. There's no way to like back this up, but I'm just trying to look at the future of these teams. And like I said, Buffalo is extremely one-dimensional. Their defense showed that even though they're ranked high, they really can't stop anybody when it came down to it.
Right.
Josh Allen is expected to do way too much, is getting paid a ton. The Eagles losing a bunch of guys. And they actually, unlike the 49ers who can create a ton of cap space, Suneil, the Eagles really can't create a ton of cap space. So they are going to lose a crap ton of those guys for sure. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think at the very least, I would put the 49ers at number 1 in the NFC. The AFC is a whole different deal. And I agree. I mean, established quarterbacks, you definitely got to give them credit. And if the 49ers play one of those teams in the Super Bowl, we're going to talk about that in a minute. That may be a whole different deal. But I think the 49ers, just player for player, are for sure right there. And if they are 5th, I mean, they're as close to 2 as they are 6.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot separating those teams. And like I said, it's kind of like the pound for pound list in the UFC. Like, what does it mean? You know what I mean? What does power rankings mean other than content creation, right? I look at it and I say, I think sometimes the national media doesn't know the nuances of a team like we do. So they just go off of generics, right? So that's why I say I think established quarterbacks is like a common trend on how they base these lists. They don't know about the team creation. They don't know about roster manipulation and all that kind of stuff. We follow the team. We know that even though the 49ers have a huge amount of free agents as well, we know we have trust in our front office that they're going to put together good teams. They know how to draft. They know how to, develop all these types of things. So there's not going to be that much of a drop off. I actually believe in the Eagles the same way. I really have a lot of respect for that front office. I think that they do a really, really great job putting together a roster. So I know they might have like certain money things and all that kind of stuff, but they're a very creative team. They have another 2 first-round picks. They have a lot of options there and a lot of core guys that are still under contract there. So I think that they're going to be very, very competitive because they're going to have to, this is their last year too, right? Because they're going to have to pay Hurts this offseason. So this is probably their last year without a big quarterback money on their books. So I feel like they're going to be going all in and being competitive, knowing that they're going to be paying their quarterback top dollar after this year. So yeah, man, I think it's going to be 49ers and Eagles back in the NFC Championship game. There's not another NFC team that really scares me. And, I can understand why Buffalo, Cincinnati, and the Chiefs are there. I think that I think the Cincinnati should be above Buffalo. I don't know how they ranked it, but I don't get how Buffalo keeps being ranked above Cincinnati when it seems like year after year, Cincinnati proves them wrong. So,
yeah, and I didn't see the top 4 rankings. I don't know what the order was, so they easily could have been. I'm sure they probably were. I would hope they were. My guess is they probably went Kansas City, Philly, because those are the Super Bowl teams. Then they went with Cincy, Buffalo, San Francisco would be my guess. I think that would probably be a fair way to do it.
Makes sense.
KW2421 says Lance has 1 full season of college ball and like 3 or 4 games in the NFL. How do we know how good of a runner Trey will be? Even Hurts started out slow in his career. Now look at him. I mean, certainly he can improve as a runner. I'm not saying he can't, but even coming out of college, and I wish I had the old videos to go back and show you, and I'm sure I could sift through Grant's old shows and find it, but I'm not going to do it. But one of the things that I said is he is not a natural runner in the sense that you're just going to design a lot of read options and he's going to beat the edge defender outside and make plays. He's more of a, okay, if there's nothing open, he's going to press the line of scrimmage, usually up the middle or in between the guard and the tackle. He's going to continue to keep his eyes downfield. And if nobody's open, then he's going to take off through one of those gaps, one of those middle gaps. And that's kind of what we've seen in the NFL where he's had success. I think for me, I'm just not going to design a lot of runs for him the way that I would Jalen Hurts because his get up to speed isn't great. He's more of like an American muscle car to where even, Hurts, Lamar, Brock Purdy even has this real quick, like they're electric cars. They're instant. They're at their top speed instantly. And Trey Lance takes a little bit to get there. Now, once he's there, he's got top end speed like a lot of these guys do, but it's that beginning part. And I just, you can gain some of that quick twitch, but some of it's natural. You're born with it. Hurts has it. Lance does not. And so it's just, they're different type of runners. That being said, I definitely think if you go a full season of Lance, he's going to have around 500 yards rushing, maybe even a little bit more. And people are going to be like, oh, see, he can run the ball, but it's how the runs are coming and how much of that is just him running off of scrambling because nobody was open. And so the defense turned their back. Or if it's a natural pass, I think he does show that he's naturally a good runner when he's supposed to be throwing and things break down. You saw it against the Arizona Cardinals, the very first play of the game. That's a pass play. A bunch of pressure came off the edge and he did exactly what I said, where he stepped up, found one of those middle gaps and exploited it. That is where his strengths lie. And so he's just a different type of runner. I'm not saying he's a bad runner. He's just not a Lamar Jackson, a Hurts, or a Fields. It's just not who he is. He's probably more of a cross between like a Daniel Jones / Patrick Mahomes. Somewhere in between there is where he's going to lie. Just athletically. And that's my opinion. I think it showed in college. I think it showed in the short time. So unless all of a sudden he proves to be something that we haven't seen, I mean, that's what it's going to take for me to believe that he's something different. Cryptic says, so we saw Mahomes again come back from 10 down in his 2 championships. For the Niners, is the defense still the way to go? Or do we live and die by the quarterback? Well, it's like I paid you to say this, Cryptic, because you just segued so beautifully into the next topic, which is how close are the 49ers to winning a Super Bowl and what is it going to take to get there? What can we learn from the Super Bowl? So I know I just threw a lot out there, but really they fall under the same umbrella, pun intended, halftime show. Suneil, how close are the 49ers to winning in the Super Bowl after watching what the Chiefs just did?
Yeah, and I mean, look, this team been in the NFC Championship game 3 out of the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. We know this team has been actually figured out a way to make their defense even better year after year after year. Their offense got better last year at the tail end of the season, obviously with CMC there, put up a lot of points. Before a Brock Purdy freak injury, did we not think that this team was going to win or had a chance to win the Super Bowl? My answer was yes. So to me, are the 49ers close to winning a Super Bowl? My answer is yes. Now, does that mean that they could just go in with the same exact team and win it? No, but I think there's a path to actually winning this Super Bowl. I think there's it's not like this team has a ton of holes that they need to plug for them to be a Super Bowl caliber roster. I do think they need to upgrade the offensive line. That's the biggest thing that I learned from this Super Bowl is if you have a dominant offensive line, doesn't really matter what the defensive line on the other side is there, because with the dominant offensive line and a quarterback that knows how to get the ball out of their hands quickly, it can negate a defensive line. And at that point, then, it's really just about scheme if you have a great offensive mind, which Andy Reid definitely showed he was in this Super Bowl. Well, I do think that we have a coach that has a great offensive mind. I do think that we have, a quarterback that can get the ball out quick if that's what needs to be done based off of what the play design and all that kind of stuff is. Do we have a dominant offensive line? We don't. And so That's the thing that I think needs to be the biggest upgrade. If we have pieces. I think that Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, and Burford can be three pieces of a dominant offensive line, but we need those other two pieces as well. So to me, that's where I don't know if that is cheating. I do think they are close to winning a Super Bowl, but that dominant offensive line is what needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I mean they're close by definition. I think one of the things that I took away from the Super Bowl is that they're further away than what I potentially thought they were. And the reason I say that is because I think there's essentially the way that you build a team is you want a top tier quarterback. And this is area of importance for me anyways. I think the league is built around quarterback play. So you want a top tier quarterback. If it's built around quarterback play and you have that top tier quarterback, you want to protect that top tier quarterback. And if there are other good quarterbacks in the league, well, you probably want to get after other top tier quarterbacks because the league is centered around that quarterback position. So that means the next two most important positions are protecting yours and getting after others. And when I look at the 49ers in those three categories, I don't know if they have their top tier quarterback. Maybe they do. Maybe that guy's Brock Purdy. Maybe that guy's Trey Lance, whatever your opinions are. But there's no guarantee that we have that top tier quarterback. We don't have a dominant offensive line. I think but they're not far. See, like they're close. And this is the thing. When I look at all three of these, all three of them are iffies. They might have the quarterback. We don't know. They might have the offensive line because if Burford steps up and they sign a guy or draft a guy or one of these guys that didn't play last year steps up and becomes a Banks type of player, well, now all of a sudden they do have the offensive line. And then with the defensive line, we know that they have Bosa and Armstead. But what do they have outside of that? Is that guy on the roster? Is that going to be a Davis? Is that going to be Drake Jackson? Do they sign somebody? Where do they get that other guy to go along with Bosa and help be a defensive or dominant defensive line to get after the quarterback? So it's like they're close in all three, but nothing's a guarantee. And so without fully knowing where they're at in those three areas, if they don't hit on any of those three, they're really far. They're actually a lot further than what we thought. But if they hit on two of those three, man, they really are that close to winning a Super Bowl. So to me, it's very incomplete right now. And if I had to make a guess, I mean, I would say that they're further away, like I said, than what I initially thought, because I just don't know what they are in those three most important areas.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's fair. Cop out, but fair. But I mean, look, we know that this team. So here's so I know that this team, Shanahan, Lynch, this whole front office, the one thing that we know they put the most emphasis in is defensive line. So I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to figure that out, because that's kind of what they planted their flag in, drafting defensive lineman after defensive lineman after deep. You know what I mean? That's one thing that we know that really matters to them. Offensive line, for as much as we kind of talk crap about their ability to draft offensive linemen, I've been in that camp. McGlinchey is one of the better right tackles in the game. He's going to make a lot of money this season. Some team's going to give him a lot of money. He might be one of the probably top 5 right tackles, and they drafted him and developed him. We thought Aaron Banks, a lot of people were talking trash about Aaron Banks. He turned out, nobody was worried about Laken Tomlinson this year. In fact, Aaron Banks might have had a better year than Laken Tomlinson did over at the Jets. You know what I mean? He's young, under contract. So they've got kind of 2 for 2 out of, the top offensive linemen that they've drafted. So maybe they are a little bit better at picking and developing offensive linemen than I gave them credit for. Quarterback thing, yeah, I don't know if Trey Lance or Brock Purdy are elite. They probably won't be next year. We could probably safely say that. Both of them need, years to develop. But I also think that they have a lot of talent around them. So maybe that one you don't need to have as elite, because the team around them can kind of elevate. But I do think those trenches are where the 49ers need to upgrade, because it's really hard to get an elite quarterback. There's a handful of them. You know what I mean? And so I don't know if that quarterback piece is something that we could guarantee, but I think those other two we can. So if you're saying 2 out of 3 gets you there, I think I'm pretty confident that we'll have 2 out of 3 going into next season.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of those two has to be number one, though. maybe I should have clarified, because I think one of the two has to be the number one thing, which is get that quarterback. Now, there's no guarantee.
Let's put it this way, Jesse.
Let me just throw this out real quick, because I know the chat's gonna be like, no, you don't. What about Foles? What about? I already know where this is going, because this is what people always say. What about Trent Dilfer? Okay, 57 Super Bowls have been played. 44 of those Super Bowls, so we're talking 78% of the Super Bowls, have been won by Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks. So the rule is you need a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. The exception is you don't. And even within that exception, if you go look at how Foles played for that Super Bowl run, and you go look at how Flacco played for that Super Bowl run, they played elite. They were the best quarterbacks for a whole Super Bowl run throughout the playoffs. So maybe you can catch lightning in a bottle. Chances are you don't. And a lot, by the way, a lot of non-elite quarterbacks make it to the Super Bowl. Not a lot of non-elite quarterbacks win the Super Bowl. And that's evident throughout history. And if you start to look really at the last 10 plus years or so, that trend is holding up even more and more and more. As we're getting into the salary cap era, and as these guys are starting to get paid a lot of money, that trend is really starting to hold up a lot more. So to me, that quarterback position, you have to figure out a way to nail that. Doesn't mean you don't have to for sure to win a Super Bowl, but if you want to make your odds increase through the roof, yes, you need that quarterback.
Yeah, I think it boils down to margin of error, right? When you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, your margin of error increases, right? The 49ers in 2019 with Jimmy G, we there's a lot of, if this happened, the 49ers win. If this happened, 49ers win. Like, if Jimmy Garoppolo hits Emmanuel Sanders down the middle while he's wide open, they probably win that Super Bowl. But because Jimmy G isn't an elite quarterback, that's a throw that got missed. Probably a guy like Patrick Mahomes has a better chance of making that kind of throw, or one of these other elite quarterbacks. I do agree with you. Like, an elite quarterback makes it a lot easier. Do I agree that it has to be an elite quarterback? I don't know. I think if this offense could score 30, 40 points with Brock Purdy or a Trey Lance, based off of just scheme and what the talent, when you have all pros, there hasn't been that many teams that have as many all pros as the 49ers do on offense. We try to think about when was the last time that's happened, and we couldn't really come up. We thought maybe the Rams that one year when it was, but I just think they need somebody that could distribute the ball and, make a play here or there. I think Brock Purdy and Trey can be that, especially if they go through a whole season healthy and get all that experience under their belt. So, but I do think that they have to upgrade the offensive line and that defensive line.
Yeah, no doubt about it. 49er Faithful says Vegas put the 49ers second to win the Super Bowl. So that's good. I mean, Vegas usually knows what they're talking about. What's up, friend of me, Greg Pinelli? He says, who will I apologize next year since Jim is gone? I don't know. We'll have to figure that out, because you play that role really, really well. So we gotta maybe Jimmy will come back and you keep apologizing for him. I don't know. Smack Jones says, I heard they are looking at Colton to replace 69. What about Moore? Last I remember, he had some pretty impressive showings out there. Hold that thought, Smack Jones. Hold that thought, because we are actually going to talk about that next. You guys are so good. Like I said, it's almost like
your audience.
Yeah,
your audience.
Definitely. It's just one of those things. So let's see. Did I miss anything? Here we go. Jesse, you don't need to bash what Brock can be to support Trey. Concentrate in showing something Trey does to improve accuracy. That's how he becomes a very good quarterback. When did I ever bash? When did I ever bash Brock? Find that for me, please. Find that for me. Like, the 49ers are the ones that put the fans in this situation where we're going to choose. Like, that's just the way that it is. You have to choose a guy to start, because the 49ers haven't told you who the starter is. So until they do, people are going to take sides. That's natural. Players are going to take sides. People, if you don't think the people in the front office are taking sides, we're going to take sides. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't like both or support both. If Brock's the quarterback, I'm going to support him just like I did this year. And here's the thing. Brock Purdy is a person, dude. I love him so much, man. He's grounded in his faith, which anybody who watches me knows that faith is a big deal in my life. He's grounded in his faith. I think mentally he's got all the makeup. One thing that I said about him all before the playoffs started is I do not think he's going to get rattled mentally. It just doesn't exist. I mean, he was so strong mentally in college. I think he was so strong mentally throughout this season. I think that's going to continue to be a strength of his. I just think that physically he tops out. I'm not going to be the guy that is always going to be positive about everything that's going on. I'm going to give you my real opinion. Do I think that Brock Purdy outplayed everything he was supposed to? Yes. Again, I'm going to say this every time that somebody says I hate him. Where were you in 2020 when I was saying that the 49ers should draft him going into the 2021 draft before they moved up to 3 and Brock Purdy pulled his name out from the draft? Where were you last year going into the draft? Because I was not only mocking him, but all throughout the college season saying that he's a guy that I would like to see the 49ers draft. So to say that I hate Brock Purdy or I bash Brock Purdy is just categorically inaccurate. It's just not an accurate statement. Now, if I'm choosing a guy, I have to tell you why I'm choosing them. I can't just be like, Trey Lance, let's move on. That's not how this works. I've got to tell you, hey, I prefer Trey Lance. Here's why. Here's what Brock does really well. Here's where his areas of opportunity are. Here's what Trey does really well. Here's his areas of opportunity. And then I've got to project who in the long term, if they develop, is going to take this team further 5, 6, 7 years down the road, not just 2023. So I'm going to give my honest opinion there. It's going to disagree with a lot of what other people are saying because people naturally are going to go based off of what they've seen. If they've seen something already, it's easier to believe it. It's a lot harder to believe something and put faith into something that you haven't yet seen. So that's where people are at. I get it. I know that I'm one of the few, at least on the content creation side, that are on the Trey Lance side of things, and that's okay. I'm not going to agree with everybody, but one thing that I'm not going to tolerate is people saying that I bash Purdy or don't like Purdy, because that's just not true. It's unequivocally not true at all. I actually like Brock Purdy a lot, and as a person, even more, respect the hell out of him for his faith, the way that he stands his ground. I really do like Brock Purdy, but if I'm choosing a quarterback to be the quarterback of this team, there are no friends in this. I've got to choose somebody that I think is going to be the better long-term answer, and that to me is Trey Lance. So if you think that's hate, I don't know what to tell you, but I don't hate Brock Purdy. Not even a single ounce of me hates that kid. I think he's a fantastic person. Hold on a second. Got that. Hold on. Super chats. Jamila says these are
that's my man's in them.
My man's in them. DMX, man.
What I'm doing, my man's in them's doing.
Rest in peace, DMX. That's awesome. Mike says there is no way that Trey will be able to be a Super Bowl quarterback if he is not given the same type of plays that Brock Purdy was given by Kyle. If he runs him a lot, then it's over. Yeah, I mean, we were saying that. What's funny is everybody comes back and is like, well, I mean, it's easy to say in hindsight. First of all, there were some of us, I see Ryan in the chat. I know Grant and I talked about it, but there were some of us that said Trey Lance needed to start year one. And those same people were also saying they need to stop running Trey so much or they're going to get him hurt before it happens. So it happened. I don't think we were wrong on either side of that right now. I think we were actually pretty right on both fronts. Unfortunately, that's not what the 49ers did. They didn't start him right away because they were in a win now window. I'm glad we know that Jimmy G, after his 5th try, is not the guy. I'm glad we got that figured out, but we still have no idea who our quarterback of the future is. So there we go. I hope it was worth it, San Francisco 49ers. Great decision-making on that one. All right. Smack Jones asked about the offensive line. That's exactly what we're going to talk about next, is the offensive line. And it sounds like they're going to handle these changes in-house. Mike McGlinchey is probably going to price his way off the 49ers roster. kudos to him. Get your money if you can, Mike McGlinchey. However, they're going to handle it in-house, kind of like what we suspected, but maybe not with the name that we expected. Maybe McKivitz is the front runner, or so it seems. That's what's being reported. How do you feel about the 49ers handling these potential free agent spots, whether Brendel or McGlinchey or both, and handling them with players that are already on this roster, Suneil?
So I'm somebody who last year wasn't too worried about this offensive line. And I think to a certain extent, I was vindicated, because I think 90% of the teams that the 49ers played, this offensive line was not just adequate, but beyond adequate as far as what they were able to do. Something that I learned from this playoff run, and just like when it comes to winning a Super Bowl, right? Teams like the Eagles, their defensive line is nasty. I think the Chiefs' defensive line can be nasty. Even a team like the Cowboys gave us some trouble. So when it comes to like the teams that you need to beat to win the Super Bowl, you can't just have an adequate offensive line. You have to be above average. You have to be a dominant offensive line. And that's not what the 49ers were this season. And it seems like more of the same, if that's the plan going in. So I don't know what the rookies are, right? So like, everybody talked about how bad Aaron Banks was in his rookie season. He didn't even get playing time. When he did get playing time, he was pushed around, all that kind of stuff. Give him a year, move him to, his natural position. All of a sudden, he looks like he's our left guard for the next decade, right? But, and Burford, I think, has shown enough to be like, all right, this guy can be, is he an all-pro right away? Or, even a Pro Bowler next season? I don't know, but I think he'll be better, and I think he was fine. Obviously, he had his issues, but he showed promise, and I believe that this team could develop that. Now, is Akil going to be the center? Is he good enough? I don't know. I've never seen him play. I know somebody mentioned Jalen Moore. We have seen Jalen Moore. Jalen Moore does not look good at a tackle position, so I don't think he's the answer. Can McKivitz play it? Yeah, in spot duty. Do I think, is he an upgrade over McGlinchey? I would say no. Is he even the same as McGlinchey? I would also say no. I think he's worse than McGlinchey. So if we're putting in a worse player at a position, how is that going to upgrade our offensive line? So to me, that isn't an answer, Jesse. I do think that either this team has some guys in the back that at these rookies that were rookies last year that can take a step up like Aaron Banks. But I personally would like them to go out in free agency and get somebody that can fill in one of these roles, and really we could look at it and be like, okay, this is an upgrade, because I think that's what we need at the offensive line.
I think it's going to be hard though, and that's where it's like, I don't know if there's a better right tackle that it's going to hit free agency than Mike McGlinchey. I think he might be the highest paid guy, and I think that might be deserved. Now, center, that's a whole different situation. I think center, it's interesting because when Mac retired, Shanahan called the center position the lifeline of the offense, essentially the heartbeat of the offense. But he hasn't gotten a full-time center for this team. He's had a bunch of one-year rentals, and Brendel might be no different. So, here's the thing is, I think they might be okay going forward. They might even, I don't want to say they'll slightly improve. Maybe they could, because I thought Banks would be fine. I wasn't one of those guys that thought Banks wouldn't be good or couldn't be good. I just thought that, wow, Tomlinson played at a Pro Bowl level. No way Banks can do that his rookie year. Well, he wasn't a Pro Bowler, but he played pretty damn good. I thought he played every bit as good as Tomlinson. So that was not the case. Maybe that guy is on the roster. I don't know if McKivitz is that guy. All right. I don't know if it's McKivitz, but I would say that there are options for sure. We look at the center position. Maybe Nick Zakelj is better than what they had in Brendel. Maybe Poe, it can play guard or center. maybe Burford can slide over to tackle. I mean, Burford played good this last season, but to me, he does play a little bit more like a tackle. I think his style might fit that better. He was a tackle primarily in college, a left tackle, and did play some right tackle, played a little bit of guard as well, but he was primarily a tackle. I think he made
in his
all
senior
conference.
season he was.
Yeah, he made
season,
all
he played
conference as a
tackle
left
that whole year.
tackle. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And
Yeah,
by the
nice.
way, he came out of high school as a tackle, a 3-star recruit. So he was a tackle in high school and college. So that might be his more natural position. Maybe they move him to right tackle. They slide in Poe and Zakel, and we're like, oh gosh, a whole new right side remake, and we're nervous about it, and we talk about it all off season, and then it pans out okay. I think one thing that I will say is I would certainly prefer that they go get like a big name player that we know is really good. And it's likely that this offensive line is not going to be dominant next year if they do things in-house. But I think that it could still be as good potentially as it was this year or right there. And I don't think it was necessarily horrible this year. It just wasn't Eagles good or even Kansas City good. And that's the two teams that ended up in the Super Bowl.
Here's the problem. Like, I know there's like, you could probably point to there's a bunch of third round and below guys on the offensive line that are there, playing well. But if you look at who the top offensive line guys are, they've all been drafted in the first and second round. And that's just facts, right? Even you look at a guy like Creed Humphreys, second round pick, so to find fifth round guys, third round guys, fourth round guys that are going to come in and immediately be impact players on the offensive line, that usually doesn't happen. Now, I'm not saying that can't happen, but that usually doesn't happen.
Agree.
I think that you're right. At right tackle, there's not an upgrade over Mike McGlinchey that's there, especially not that you'd be willing to pay. That is going to be in the price range that the 49ers are willing to pay.
Right.
I agree with you. I think Burford needs to move out to right tackle. I do think there's some right guards, though, that you could bring in that would be cheaper than a tackle, but that can really be an anchor for that right side. And, whether Brendel isn't like a superstar by any stretch of the imagination, but played really well this year. I think people underestimated what he was able to do. And the problem with 49er offensive linemen is they're really good in run, but they're not as great in pass protection. So you would love to see that somebody who's good at both. But I think I would like to see Burford moved out to right tackle, then bring in an established right guard. There are some out there that I think they could get for under $10 million a year that are still decently young and in their prime. And then whether they bring back Brendel or they put in Zakil or whatever it is, that to me would be the ideal situation. At least you have three positions on the offensive line that you're really confident about. And it could, in the middle of that right side, you have somebody that is established and could kind of develop the other two around that one player. So that's what what I would like to see done.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a horrible idea. Rome the Upsetter says draft Ricky Stromberg or the center from Michigan. Two completely different categories, or at least it seems. Obviously, once you get into the draft, these guys are ranked completely different than like PFN or PFF or some of these draft websites would have it. But it does seem like the center from Michigan is going to go probably round 3. Ricky Stromberg is probably round 5 to UDFA potentially. I also like the center from Oregon, Forsyth, however you want to say his name. I like him a lot over Stromberg. Actually, I think Stromberg plays upright a lot. I think for this system, Forsyth would be a really, really good fit. He's very athletic. He also anchors pretty damn well. You go watch that game against Georgia, which there's not a lot of good to take from that Oregon-Georgia game, but if you watch him strictly, there is some good to take from him for sure. He definitely held his own. He moved people. He's a good puller. He gets to the second level good. I think he actually could be an asset in this offense. So if you're going to draft a center, I think that there's a lot of options. I do like Stromberg as well. The center from Michigan, obviously very good, but they would have to take him a little bit earlier. And Jed, to this comment, I would say go watch my Mr. Right versus Mr. Right Now video. And and don't worry about the conclusion of the video, but listen to how I talk about Brock Purdy. Listen to what I think he needs to improve on and what I think he can improve on. And I even say that there are some things, and I'm very specific, that he does better than Trey and will probably always do better than Trey Lance. And so, again, like if you take from that, just because my conclusion is that I think Trey Lance has a better chance of being the long-term answer, if he pans out, then I mean, I guess I there's no way for me to sway you. If your opinion's made up and you think I hate Brock Purdy, then I cannot sway you. But I don't think that I show that in any form or fashion. Shay says, we've seen McKivitz and more. Please do help me, God. I'm praying for every QB that takes a snap. Here's the thing about Moore. If you move Burford out, Moore was actually brought in to play guard for this team, and he is a more natural guard. He keeps getting thrown out at tackle, and he's had like 2 games where he's done decent, and then the rest he's been awful. He's just not a tackle, man, and that's
terrible.
Yeah,
bro, terrible. Like worst. Like doesn't deserve to be in the league. The type of way he played at tackle.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
but at guard he actually might be pretty good. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I'll say this. It seems like the depth of the offensive line is going to be intact, and that's a good thing. But are they improving in the starting 5? That is a whole different level that we just don't. I mean, we don't have the answers to. I have no idea if they're going to improve in that starting 5, and that's the most important thing. I mean, depth is great, but quite frankly, you need to be good.
5 starters.
You need 5 starters. Exactly. You don't need like 7 guys that might be able to start because, we don't know who's better. We need 5 for sure starters, and then depth is obviously a good thing. So
right.
Dustin says nothing because I take it off the screen. Dustin says also at the end of the game when the Chiefs running back kneeled at the 1-yard line instead of going in, so not a Kyle move. Well, that running back was our running back, if I remember correctly. It was Jet McKinnon. And yes, very, very smart move. Didn't the 49ers have a situation against Green Bay that was when Kyle Juszczyk and then Jimmy snapped it at 10 seconds? Anyways, yes, you're right. He also says, not going to lie, seeing the greatness of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes got me losing confidence in Kyle because he doesn't learn from his mistakes, a.k.a. no more upside.
I disagree.
I mean, to be fair, I think a lot of these same things were said about Andy Reid, although in a different fashion. I think people looked at Andy Reid as like fly by the seat of his pants, risk taker type, that would never figure out how to dial it back. And that's why he would never win a ring, to where they look at Kyle and say, he's kind of risk adverse. He's unwilling to take those chances and he'll never do that. And so he'll never win. I mean, I think that people can improve, but Andy Reid right now is, but to be fair, I think if we're looking at the pantheon of great coaches throughout the NFL history, I would say that Andy Reid's top 5 at this point. I mean, he's got 2 Super Bowl rings. He's been to 9 conference championships, 2 different teams. I mean, he's been to 10. He's really, really good.
He has one skill set that is probably better than any quarterback ever, and maybe other than Walsh, his ability to figure out quarterbacks. Like, he does an amazing job isolating quarterbacks in college and drafting them. Mm-hmm. He did that with McNabb. He did that with Kolb was a good quarterback that he drafted. Obviously drafting Patrick Mahomes. He's great.
A good quarterback. Let's say he got cold paid for sure.
Yeah, but he drafted him pretty high. It was like a 2nd-round pick when they had Donovan McNabb. So I remember that was real drama when they brought in Kolb because they had Donovan McNabb, who obviously is a Hall of Famer as well. He's just really good at picking quarterbacks and isolating quarterbacks and all that kind of stuff. That's obviously Kyle Shanahan's weakness at this point. I think that a lot of people are focused on recency bias. I remember those Eagles teams, and everything that people are saying about Kyle Shanahan, they said about Andy Reid: game management, not being able to win the right game, not big game, not being able to learn from his mistakes. All of these types of things that people are talking about Kyle Shanahan was mentioned. And if anybody that watches the show, and I know, Jesse, you can vouch for me. My comp for Kyle Shanahan has always been one coach and one coach only. And which coach is that?
Andy Reid?
Yeah, it's always been Andy Reid. Like I've always said, people don't. I was a big Eagles fan. The reason why I know so much about the Eagles is because they always used to pick up 49er players. I don't know if you remember that back in the day.
Yeah,
like 49ers free agents would go to the Eagles. So that's why I knew so much about the Eagles, because they always had players that I was cheering for on the 49ers. So I always paid attention to them as well. And Andy Reid, a lot of what you talk about Andy Reid, what Andy Reid was talked about for the Eagles is what they talk about Kyle Shanahan right now. So I think that Andy Reid would have figured it out at the Eagles if they gave him more time. I totally believe Kyle Shanahan will figure it out as well. It's just about whether or not they're going to give him get patience, because reality is it's not easy to win a Super Bowl, man. It's not easy. Not very many coaches do it, and not very many coaches continue to have the type of success that an Andy Reid has. And even though Kyle Shanahan hasn't won a Super Bowl, there's not many NFC teams that have had as much success as Kyle Shanahan's 49ers have in the last 4 years as well. Like, they're the only team that's the consistent, always in the NFC Championship game. There's not another team that's been there as many times. So I'm just saying, like, it's inches, not yards at this point, as far as how far we're away, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally fair. And they are close. They're very, very close. It's just, you got to get over the hump. And I think the thing is, and this is kind of just what I've come to the conclusion of, is that Shanahan's not going anywhere. And so a lot of people may not like it, may not believe in him, what have you, but he's not going anywhere. He's going to be here for a long time. And I think that he's going to continue to get opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, just like Andy Reid did with Philly. I mean, he was there for, I don't even remember how long, like 12 years, 14 years. You had Marvin Lewis, the same thing with Cincinnati. I mean, unless they have back-to-back years where they don't make the playoffs, I don't see a situation where Shanahan's gone. So he's going to be here. And I'll say this, it is nice. It does feel a lot like when Harbaugh was here, where it's like, at least, every year you're going to be there. You're going to have a shot. You may not win, and it is hard to win, but we do know that we have a shot with Kyle. It would be nice to get over the hump for sure. I get it. I totally understand that. And there are some things that aren't perfect with Kyle, and that's the way it is. I mean, if you don't win Super Bowls, you're not perfect. There's areas of opportunity, but you definitely could do much worse than Kyle as well. And so, I'm
sorry, Jesse.
I was just going to say, Andy Reid is special. I mean, Andy Reid is, again, we're comparing him to a top 5 coach of all time. I mean, we have 2 coaches in this league right now that might be top 5 all time, and Andy Reid and Bill Belichick. Like, it's hard to be better than those guys, but Shanahan, I think right now in this moment is close to pressing, being right behind those guys. So,
they've been coaches way longer than Shanahan too. There's a comment by Emiliano talking about the smugness of Kyle Shanahan during press conferences.
That I agree.
But here's the thing. This is what people are forgetting. Recency bias. This was exactly the same thing that people would say about Andy Reid in his press conferences. Look, the reality is, when you're a coach like Kyle Shanahan, when you're a coach like Andy Reid, that knows that you're good enough to be performing better than what's happening, you get asked the same damn questions every single press conference. And so after a certain time, think about if you know what you're doing can perform and can win, but it's not happening, and they're still like, what do you need to do better? All this kind of stuff. I remember so many press conferences where people were asking Andy Reid the same type of questions that they asked Kyle Shanahan, and Andy Reid was short, to the point, and people were like, oh, he doesn't learn. He's just he arrogant, all of these types of things. I remember specifically, it's coming into my mind when he drafted Kevin Kolb. And they were like, why would you draft a quarterback in the second round when you have so many needs on your team? You guys are close to getting into the Super Bowl. You have a great coach. Why do you think it's important? He's like, well, when you have a good quarterback, you draft him. When you see a good quarterback, you draft him. And like, people, the stories that were written about him were just the same stuff that people say about Shanahan. It's not till now when he's winning Super Bowls and he has like an all-time great quarterback and all these types of things that now all of a sudden his personality is considered what it is. Bill Belichick was considered an a-hole in press conferences and all that kind of still to this day, but he wins, so people deal with it. So to me, it's like the one Super Bowl, like I put out this tweet. If Andy Reid loses this Super Bowl, he would have been to 10 NFC championship games, 4 Super Bowls, and only won 1 Super Bowl. Does he still does he get criticism, or because he won a Super Bowl, is he scot-free? And some people said they criticize him. Some people, didn't say anything. To me, if Kyle Shanahan had a Super Bowl, I don't think his personality changes at all. And I think people are just cool with it. It's just he hasn't won that Super Bowl yet. And to me, the things that people point out in his press conferences and all this kind of stuff, to me, you look at some of the great coaches, they all have those same qualities. They all have those same calibers. The one thing that I think is fair is his ability with quarterbacks right now. That's fair criticism. He has to figure that out. But other than that, I think that people just forget what these coaches were before they won Super Bowls.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, and it's easy to forget, and that is one area. That's one area where Andy Reid is winning. I mean, not only did he trade up to get Patrick Mahomes, but he then went to Texas Tech and learned some of the air raid offense to make Patrick Mahomes comfortable. I mean, he just went about it the right way. And a lot of people are like, well, it's because of Patrick Mahomes he's winning the Super Bowl. Well, yeah, true, but he's a big hand in why Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes as well. I mean, he really bent over backwards to make it work with Patrick Mahomes and trading up to get him and then doing all of that. So, I'm not going to blame him for that. I mean, he's the one that had the eye for Patrick. He's the one that made it work, and he's the one that went out of his way to add in some of the air raid concepts to make him comfortable immediately. So, you're right. I mean, I think opinions change of anybody once you win. Once you win, it's like, okay, you're a champion. You can get away with really whatever you want at that point. But until he wins, these are always going to be the question marks. And if you haven't won, you haven't won yet. So the floodgates are open, my friend. He's got to get used to it. And Rome the Upsetter says Eric's getting no love. Yeah, Bieniemy, man. I don't know what's going on there. I really feel bad for him. I don't know how both coordinators for the Eagles got hired, yet the Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator yet again doesn't get hired. Yeah, there's got to be something to it that I just don't know. There's a backstory or something. That's crazy. Aaron from 49ers First Takes. What's up, man? He says, Last Second Sports. Hey, my friend, thanks for popping in to last night's stream. Of course, my man. I love to show support for the community. How is the new camera going? Well, you tell me. You guys are the ones that see it. Does it look better? Is it obvious? Did I waste my money? No, it's tough. I mean, StreamYard is a streaming service, and so you can only stream in 1080p. I can't even use the 4K on it. And it's going to compress files because it is over the internet. And so you're probably not going to see as much of a difference as what you would if I were to just use it as a camera. But I am definitely happy. I think it is much better than a webcam for sure. No doubt about it. And I thought there was another super chat. Maybe not. Okay, there it is. 49ers Faithful says, just put up an A grade O-line. Don't spend too much money on defense anymore. Today's NFL defense doesn't win a Super Bowl. They want to see more scores like the NBA and FIFA. I mean, I don't know if I can argue with that. They definitely want to see more points scored. That's why I think the quarterback position is so damn important, man. I agree. Twisted Clown says, situation, you have to trade a star this year before they leave or they get too old. Who do you trade and what need do you cover? Ooh, so we have to. This is a situation. I like this.
Easy for me.
Oh, okay, Mr. Easy. Go ahead. If it's probably the same guy as I have, but go ahead.
Debo. I'm trading Debo, and I'm assuming we get a first round pick for that, and I'll probably go. Man, I would love to be able to go offensive line, but there's not that many like first round graded offensive linemen that fit into what the 49ers need. So I'd probably go edge or interior D lineman with that first round pick.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'd probably have to go Debo as well, just because there's some redundancy with him and CMC, and he's going to be very expensive soon. So I'd probably also have to go Debo. If somehow I can swing him, it's not realistic, but him for Aaron Rodgers would be great. I don't foresee that happening. I think a trade that they could potentially make that might have been out there last year, a little bit different, but 49ers need a right tackle, and they probably need more of a pure receiver. You can flip them over to the Jets for Moore and Becton. Just saying. Just saying, get your right tackle.
Do we really want another injury-prone right tackle?
Yeah, I mean, you're injury-prone until you're not. You know what I mean? And
Right.
One thing that I've seen from Becton is he's lost a ton of weight, unneeded weight, which will probably make him quicker in the feet. I think from a talent perspective, he's certainly on a much higher level than what McGlinchey is. Again, he's got to tap into it, right? I feel like we're talking about Lance and Purdy here, but he's got to tap into it because McGlinchey's shown it. And Elijah Moore is, I mean, he's in the doghouse over there, but he's a good player, man. I think especially in this offense, he could be a really, really good player, and he's a pure receiver that can flat out. He can play, I think. So if you could trade Debo for those two, get younger and fill two needs, I'd probably consider pulling the trigger on something like that. But you told me I had to trade him, and it's my favorite player in the league. So before everybody in the chat says that I hate him, because I know that's coming. Apparently, I hate players if I don't say everything is great about them. That's the way it works around here. I don't make the rules. I just follow them. Gammon says, I subbed to both Last Second Sports channels. I appreciate you. Gammon comes back and says, did Suneil call someone an a-hole? How uncouth of you.
Right.
Did you? I don't think you did.
Yeah, no, I said that people were saying that Andy Reid used to be.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I got you. I was like, did you call somebody in the chat an a-hole? I don't remember that.
Never that.
I don't remember that one. Okay, let's round this thing out. Free agency. And I don't know how much of a chance you've had to look at it, but there's some big name free agents out there. Is there anybody that you've got your eye on early that you're like, man, if the 49ers can go and get this player, go all in for one player, you got three of them. Okay, you've looked at it a little bit. Who are the three players you want the 49ers to go after?
All right, so the first player is because of the Steve Wilkes connection.
Okay,
he's an unrestricted free agent, somebody that I think would fit in really, really well to help bolster this secondary, and that's Greedy Williams from Cleveland. So the reason why he's a great tackling cornerback, he's somebody who has experience, obviously a first-round draft pick for Cleveland. Steve Wilkes was the defensive coordinator there when he was drafted. So I think that bringing him over gives a little bit of an insurance policy if they can't bring back E-Man, if there is some, injuries there with Lenore or Ward. I think he would be an upgrade over whoever would be that second or third option for the 49ers. So I think that would be a great free agent to go after. My second one is this is if they move Burford to right tackle, which I think they should, bring in a talented right guard. To me, that's going to be Ben Powers from Baltimore. He's 27 years old, been able to play both left guard and right guard in the league at a high level. Somebody that I think could still fit. I don't think you need to pay him $10 million a year, $9 million a year. They could probably get him, and he's 27. So even if you give him like a 2-3 year deal for offensive lineman, you still are getting his prime years there. I think that you bring it. You have a offensive line where you have Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Powers, and Burford. Now you're talking about four guys that you could really see maybe elevating. I think that's a better offensive line than whatever we put what we had last year. And then the third one, and I don't know if this is possible, but you kind of gave me some hope when you talked about the 49ers could free up $60 million
For
by
sure.
going through all of that. Deron Payne, brother. Deron Payne. Bring him in. Get finally an interior lineman that we could depend on, that could stay healthy, that could stop the run and plug up holes to give Nick Bosa some help on that defensive line. I think you got a Bosa, Armstead, Payne, and then insert whomever on the others as the fourth option. I think that defensive line is going to create a lot of havoc for any offensive line. So to me, that is the three that I want them to bring in.
I love it. You had me at Deron Payne. Remember
Yes.
trade deadline, he was the guy that I really wanted. So yes, Payne was definitely on my list, no doubt about it. Mike Crocker says Orlando Brown. I would love that, but it sounds like they're going to franchise tag him. They're not going to let him go anywhere. So, but that's a good name as well. All day, every day, Kim says Kyle gets a C grade tops. I think he's passed on Patty because he thought he was a project. My opinion is Kyle isn't confident in developing quarterbacks. Maybe true. Brock is already who he's going to be, and it makes it easier on Kyle. I mean, he's certainly much further along in his development after playing 4 years and probably a lot closer to his ceiling. So there might be some truth to that. We'll see. Although I am confident that he is the reason that Trey Lance is here. So, maybe he liked the idea of what Trey Lance could be, not the getting him to where he needs to be portion. So there might be something to that. Gammon says, Jesse, I have been waiting years to finally prove you wrong and stand you up on your own show. Looking forward to the call-in Christmas in February. I can't wait. I like it. Call-in show tomorrow, definitely. And Shay says I would trade Bosa. He's worth the most. That's a good point. I mean, you probably get 2 first-round picks for Bosa, and you don't have to pay him. A lot of people have got this thought, and we saw somebody say it earlier, but that the philosophy is don't go all in on defense, go all in on offense. That's how you win now. So if that is your philosophy, then definitely. I mean, at some point you can't pay everybody, and if you can get 2 first-round picks for Bosa, and you have to trade somebody, remember the scenario is you have to trade somebody, then totally understand why you would go that route for sure. Free agents that we can get. Obviously, I'm with you with Deron Payne.
What do you think about Greedy?
I like Greedy. I like the Greedy. I love Greedy a lot coming out of college. Plus, best DB name maybe ever. I mean, really.
Sauce
really
Gardner
good.
is pretty fire.
Sauce is good too. No, Sauce is also really good. But Greedy, it's close. But yes, no, Greedy was a guy that I liked a ton coming out of LSU. I think a lot of people did. He ended up slipping a little bit, and I think he's actually been pretty decent. I wouldn't mind having him. Safety position. I mean, I was big on it last year. I'm going to be big on it again this year. I really wish they would have drafted a safety, or gone out and got one in free agency last year. They didn't do that. It worked out for them this year, but they need to find a long-term answer. So some of the pipe dream guys are going to be Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Would love to have him, 25 years old. You're taken from the Eagles. He's very, very Jimmy Ward-like, so that's a great fit. Jesse Bates is going to be out there. But if you're not going to overpay or pay a ton for those guys, a kid that I liked a lot coming out of college, and I think has been pretty good also in the NFL, Nasir Adderley. I like Nasir Adderley, and he's going to be a heck of a lot less expensive than some of those other guys. I would say Javon Hargrave also, if you're going to get a little bit of an older defensive tackle, but again, steal from the Eagles. He's a guy that's a really good player as well. Great pass rusher from the interior. So I think we're in line with some of the positions that we're looking at. Maybe some of the players are different, but for me, those are some of the pie in the sky names that I would love to see the 49ers go get. And there's a lot out there. I mean, the free agency this year is going to be a lot of fun.
There's another guy that I think Yannick Ngakoue.
Yeah, Ngakoue for sure. Yeah.
He's a player. I mean, I think they need a stud on the offensive line and a stud on the defensive line. That's what they need to bring in. That's what I want, whether that's through the draft or through free agency. I think that's the two positions that they need to upgrade.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I think they're going to have the money again. So my projection for free agency, I think they're for sure going to have at least 38 million. Right now they have around 8 million. They can free up roughly another 30 by extending Bosa, which they're going to do, reworking CMC's contract, which they're going to do, and then reworking and pushing back money for Fred Warner. That right there is going to free up roughly 30 million on top of the 8 they have. That'll give them roughly 38 million to go into free agency with, but they can get up close to 70 million. They have Armstead out there. They have Travarius Ward. They have Trent Williams. They have George Kittle. Any of these guys, if they rework their deals, they can free up a ton of money. Now, I wouldn't necessarily do that with the guys that are pressing 30 years old. That's just me personally, because basically you're kicking the can down the road. And even if Trent Williams retires on you, you're going to have to continue to pay him after he's retired because you've reworked that deal. So I probably wouldn't go that route. But if they really want to go all in and they want to go make some splashes in free agency, they could have upwards of $70 million if they really want to go that crazy. So the options are there for sure. Where's the 49ers mindset? Do they believe that they have to win this year before some of these other guys get paid even more next year? I don't know. I'll be curious to see, but I would say for sure we're going into free agency with 38 million to play with, and that's enough to go get a big time player of some sort. At
if
least
they could just get one
right there.
If they could just get one, what position are you bringing in? Let me make it even harder. You could bring in one. What player are you bringing in?
It's got to be my guy Payne. I've been on the Payne train since the trade deadline, so I got to continue to roll with it.
I agree. I think that they don't do a good job picking a interior defensive lineman. Bring one in that we know is already good. So.
Yeah, Kelsey was begged to come back to the Eagles last offseason. They gave him hella beer as a gift for agreeing not to retire. Asked a lot for anyone to beg him to come back again.
My best friend is an Eagles fan. Kelsey's already come out and said he's either retiring with the Eagles. No, he's not going to play for any other team other than the Eagles. They have a backup center. They drafted some guy actually the guy that the 49ers were going to try to draft. Kelsey's either coming back to the Eagles or retiring. No chance he goes anywhere else.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. He may retire, but they drafted Juergens, who's going to be a hell of a center likely as well. So the Eagles have done a good job. They've got the contingency plan in there for Kelsey. They've got the 2 first-round draft picks. Like, they're going to lose a lot of pieces, but they're going to retool very quickly here on the fly. It'll be interesting to see what the Eagles do. But yeah, Kelsey, I mean, they were this close. They may not have to talk him into it. He may have talked himself into it, thinking, okay, we're right here. We can make it happen. We'll see. But, if he retires, then Kelsey, you had a great career. You lost to your brother in the Super Bowl. That's, it sucks, but it is what it is. The Eagles are going to be there, though. They're going to hang around for sure. Suneil, as always, thank you so much for doing this Tuesday show with me. If you have not subscribed to Suneil's channel, go to the link in the description. It is pinned right there. And then make sure you subscribe to the Last Second Sports channel, where we are doing all things NFL this offseason as well. Appreciate each and every one of you. Stay blessed. And we'll be back at it tomorrow with a call-in show. So if you have a take, you disagree with me, you want to talk Brock Purdy and tell me why I'm an idiot or that I hate him or whatever you want to say, that's your time. Call in tomorrow. We'll talk then. Peace.